So we're holding again in Pirkei Avos. Now it's Perek Beis and Mishneh Beis. We just finished the first Mishnah speaking about Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, was saying whatever he said. And the most important thing that he said was that the way a person should behave is take the middle road. Don't go too extreme in either way. And it should be comfortable for anybody around you in your surroundings, that they should feel comfortable with the way you're behaving. They shouldn't think it's odd. Or even if you're doing it l'shem shemayim, try to keep it in a way where it doesn't look, it should have some sort of a pe'er, like we said, a niceness. And it's part of the way we do our avodas Hashem, which is the most important thing, is that, and interestingly enough, you would say, why am I doing it for me? I'm doing it for me. I don't have to care. I'm doing it for my frumkeit. Why do I care what anybody else says? So if Yehuda Nasi says, no, you do have to care. A person should care about other things people think about him, because it reflects on who you are and reflects on the Rabbi Nishlan. And that was the main theme of the first Mishnah. This begins with Rabbi Gamliel. Now this, of course, as we said before, we've had Rabbi Gamliel before, but this is the third Rabbi Gamliel. So he is actually the son, as the Mishnah says, of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. So Rabbi Gamliel, says the Mishnah, the Noisho of Yehuda Hanasi Oimer. He, the son of Yehuda Hanasi, this is what he says. Now the question we have, first of all, before we continue this Mishnah, I think this is the only time in all that we had before, and it was father to son, but it never ever mentions that he was the son of the previous person. It just says Rabbi Gamliel, the Hillel, Shammai. It doesn't say Rabbi Gamliel, but Noisho, Yehuda Hanasi. Why is the Mishnah saying this? So, as I said continuously, that because the way Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the great Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi who we call Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the way he behaved and the way he conducted his whole life was such a proper way that his son, it reflected, Rabbi Gamliel reflected on his children as well. And Rabbi Gamliel, being the son of Rabbi Yehuda, who became the next Nasi, he was the Mamal Malkam of Rabbi Yehuda, of Rabbi, he had the same derech. Because as we're going to see, the Mishnah says, what was his derech? What does he add to what his father said? And he doesn't really add this. He just says another way of what the father was saying, basically. Yafa Talmud Torah im derech eretz. Torah, learning Torah is the one thing that's hagisa b'yom v'layla. It's a commandment. It's a mitzvah that we're supposed to do literally 24/7. That's the halacha of learning Torah. Hagisa b'yom v'layla. You should hurry with it. You should work in it night and day. Now, of course, we can't do this 24 hours a day. But of course, if you go to sleep so that you should wake up and be able to learn, automatically you're sort of the learning of the Torah. In fact, there was a time he had the yeshiva in Radin, and it was midnight, and there was still about 10 people in the Beis Medrash, but these were the 10 of his best Talmidim, and the level of learning at that time was unbelievable, at that particular moment especially. And all of a sudden the Chafetz Chaim walks in. He walks in with his son-in-law. He walks into the Beis Medrash, and he looks around, and he goes over to the bima, to the center, and he gives a clap, and he says, Rabbi Isai, it's time to go to sleep. And everybody looked at him because it was the first time he'd ever done it. And he says, and they said, he must mean, we're probably not doing enough, so it looks like we're sleeping, so he wants us to go to sleep, rather sleep and accomplish that with that. So they went, the ruach in the Beis Medrash became so much stronger. And Chafetz Chaim saw what was going on. He realized what happened. So he himself went, he took a step ladder, and he shut the lights. And there weren't lights in those days, there were flames. And he lowered the flame to the point it was uncomfortable to learn. And then they saw that he bent it. And he said, Rabbi Sai, he says, I understand what you're doing, and you're going to get schar for the whole night of your sleeping, he said. But if by you staying up late and tomorrow you're going to not have the koyach to learn it with the same energy, then you are going to, the learning is going to suffer. So your sleeping is your part of your learning as well. So that's why we're saying you're supposed to constantly have your hashkafas should be towards learning of Torah. But says Rabbi Gamliel, Yafa Talmud Torah im derech eretz. He says reverse in a way. He says a person is supposed to learn. Derech eretz means over here not behavior, although it's part of behavior. He says a person is supposed to make a living. He says a person should go out and make a living and learn as well. Now, not learn as well. He's supposed to learn and as well make a living. The primary function of a person's life should technically be learning. So that's what he's saying. You take the middle of the road. My father said, take the middle of the road. Don't be so extreme that you think that the man is going to come forever. Of course, we all know that this in Klal Yisrael, people who devote themselves to sitting and learning, but somewhere the money has to come from somewhere. So if it's a strain on somebody else, so derech eretz, yafa means again, it's like the pe'er. It's nicer. It's more acceptable when a person is learning Torah and he doesn't have to come on to other people to support him, but he's able to do it himself. That is the highest form of learning Torah. So the Talmud Torah is enhanced. Yafa Talmud Torah. The Talmud Torah is enhanced with the derech eretz, meaning the learning. And then he says another thing over here. A person who exerts himself when he's sitting and learning, and of course, as his hagdama, he started with together with working, he's going to be so busy that he's not going to have time to sin. So he's not going to sin. So the combination of learning and working, of course, Torah helps you stay away from sin. But at times there's open moments, open times that you have time. It says the two things together, the learning and the working, you won't have time to sin. And during the years back in the time of the Gemara, everybody, as we once mentioned, most people were in farming. I mean, people, that's how the most of commerce was farming. Things obviously going on, but the farming was the biggest industry. I think it was Rabbi, was somebody in the Gemara, I forget who it was, said like this: twice a year, when they gather the crops, 2 months a year, you're supposed to leave the base medrash and go to work and help gather the crops. So you worked hard for 1 month in the winter, before the winter, in the fall, and 1 month in the spring. And that 2 months, you supported yourself for the rest of the year. You didn't live large, but you at least had money and you worked for it. So unfortunately, for 2 months a year, the base medrash suffered. There was less learning. So therefore, the 7th year, every 7 years was Shemitah. And Shemitah, you were not allowed to work the fields. So that's the 7th year. So for 6 years, 2 months a year, you went to work. You made it up in the 7th year. 7th year is 12 months. There, because you weren't allowed to work the fields in the 7th year, you made up those 2 months over those 6-year period. So for 12 months, you learned on a steady stream. And that's how they used to operate in those days. But Bekitzer, the whole idea of just sitting back and learning and making that your vocation and having somebody else to support you, of course, it's very nice if somebody can and you're learning. I'm not talking about when people start when they get married or something. It's another way, a form of trying to set a tone in a marriage. But at the end of the day, the Shimon Gamliel rather, says, my father said you're supposed to do things the proper way and the right way and not become a burden on somebody else. You're not going to sin. And then he continues with this Mishneh. Anybody who just learns Torah, but he doesn't combine it together with working, is safe for the tail of a good at the end, he's going find out that because he's desperate, he's gonna be so poor that he's depressed, and he's not gonna be able to learn anyway. So at the end, his whole Torah will be forgotten, and not only will he be forgotten, he's going to do things that are improper when it comes to business, or somehow he's going to be so desperate that he'll do things that generally somebody who's sitting and learning should not be doing. So everything is going to go wrong. So you have to combine this learning together with working. And there was a Batchen. He always used to use these words. B'chol Torah, she'ein ima malacha. Ima is the lashon the keva. So he used to say it like this. He once went to Lakewood, and Rosh Hashiva once asked him. It says that the Rosh Hashiva tells him, "I look." He says, "The Mishneh says that a person is supposed to go to work, otherwise things get forgotten. But look, we have 5,000 kids over here. They're sitting and learning, and nothing's forgotten. Everything is going wonderful." So the Batman laughs and he tells him, "Listen to me." He says, "V'chol Torah she'ein ima malacha." If the guy is learning Torah and she's not working, ima is a lashon nekeva. He said it in a jokey way. Somebody has to support. So most likely, everybody here, his wife is working. V'chol Torah she'ein ima is the day he's gonna have to work anyway. So if she's not going to be working, so he terminology of ima for the wife. And then the Mishneh, you have people who are they're public servants. They work for the people, so to speak. You have doctors. So, and the best case scenario is a Hatzalah member. So somebody who's oisik in Atzibah, he gets tremendous char because he gives up of himself for other people. But what happens, unfortunately, when somebody gets into this mode, a little full of himself, he gets a little bit the gaiva. He starts to feel like he's more special than anybody else. Doctors, they think they're the ones that are really healing, and of course they're doing something, but it's the Rebbeinu Shalom that helps to heal. And so he says like this: he should do it. He should do it altruistically. He shouldn't do it for himself, for the guy, but to walk around in there so he should have like the walkie-talkies and the keys on the side, the this and the that. It's very nice. He's doing a wonderful job, and he gets hard for that. But the best way, a form of doing this, is l'shem shemayim. Why? Because if he does it l'shem shemayim, then he's always going to have this chus avos. Chus avos is Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Avram was the epitome of chesed, as we said, and he did everything for the Rebbeinu Shalom, towards the Rebbeinu Shalom. The whole reason he did chesed was he fed those people so that they should thank the Rebbeinu Shalom. He made them bench, and that was the way. And so, if anything, he needs this person, this Hatzalah member, this doctor. He needs something. If he does l'shem shemayim, if anything comes up, the schus of Avram Avinu especially comes and helps him. And the righteousness, of course, of these Avos is forever. It doesn't just happen once. Anytime something happens, we turn around and the Rebbeinu Shalom helps because of the schus avos. And then he finishes the atem, and you, in other words, the public servants. Now, what does that mean? Well, first of all, to touch the words, to say what the words mean, it says that you're going to be rewarded completely in full for your efforts, he says, as if you did it. What do you mean, as if you did it? Members of the Hatzalah, and I'm going to use that because it's a very, very good example for these types of things, because they're the biggest form of, we know, of people who do chesed, and mostly it's, of course, l'shem shemayim. And if they do feel a little good about themselves, I think they deserve it. But at the end of the day, a guy is in the middle of davening, his beeper goes off, or his phone, or it's a walkie-talkie goes off, and he closes his siddur, and he's Shabbos. He's talking on the radio, on the walkie-talkie, and he runs out of shul, gets into his car. He misses Shachris, he misses Minyan, he misses everything that the average person is sitting back in shul, just misses laning, and he didn't get it. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. Says the Mishnah, it's no problem. Because the Rebbeinu Shalom is mamala the schus. Not only do you get the schus because it bothers you that you have to leave. Nobody wants to leave in the middle of shul. He wants to finish davening. Oh, let me just bench. No, don't bench. If there's something, if you're eating and your beeper goes off or whatever you have goes off, don't bench. You're not allowed to bench. You got to run. You got to do everything immediately as much as you can to save a life. It trumps everything. So he's losing out that benching is for an hour and a half, 90 minutes after you eat is the time frame that will bench for the meal that you ate. In that case, if for 90 minutes by the time he gets to the hospital and he comes back, this is benching. So what happens? The Rebbeinu Shalom says, no, I'm going to give you schar, and he uses the word mala ani aleichem schar harbe kilo asisam. I won't just give you schar. Okay, you bench. No. You benched now. Like the biggest tzaddik can go in the way he benches. He benches with his whole kavanah, you're going to get that same schar. And that's what Yossi is saying. So when you do something for the Rebbeinu Shalom, for the people, for his people, for L'Shem Shemayim, or anything that is Oisik Matzibur, you have tremendous amount of credit. Rebbeinu Shalom watch. There's a very interesting story that there was a fellow in Russia, a Russian, very, very wealthy Russian person. It was the late 1800s. And he had a lot of business. And they approached him and they asked him to open a factory in Eretz Yisrael, because the Yishuv in Eretz Yisrael, he used to send the money to Eretz Yisrael to the Yishuv, but it was very, very many times. Late 1800s and early 1900s, they were living from the day by literally, if they wouldn't get money from Europe, they would starve. He said, I don't need another business. What's my point? I need another business. So they said, you send us money anyway. Why don't you invest in a business that you can open a factory and people will have jobs? You know, the Gemara says the highest form of tzedakah is not giving somebody the $100 or the $500. It's giving him a job. Because it's not just today. You give a guy a job, he has bread every day. If you give him $100 now, he has bread just for today. So at the end, convinced to open a factory. And he opened a factory. He opened a tea factory in the late 1800s. It's supported whoever was in those days. Most of them were Gedolim that sat and learned, but at least there was commerce and industry and there was money there because the factory was a successful tea factory. What happened to this man? This man obviously lived in Russia. In the early 1900s, the Bolsheviks came in, and then the communists came in. And the first thing they did was they took away everybody's money, took away everybody's factory. This man didn't have a dime to his name. He had some money hidden away. Other than that, he had nothing left. But he had a tea factory in Eretz Yisrael. And the name of the tea factory is Wysatsky. Still around today. Now I don't know if the factory is still in Eretz Yisrael, but Wysatsky was the name of this fellow living in Russia, real Russian name, and he opened a factory in Eretz Yisrael to support Klal Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. And because of that, that's the only thing that saved him. And he still then came back. His money, he became wealthy again from the tea factory. So we see the Rebbeinu Shalom, somebody who gives towards the Rebbeinu Shalom for to help his people, he gets paid back in spades. When we saw talking about before with the Yigiyas, the learning and you suppose Yigiyas Shnei Mishkachas Oven, Torah has to have a Yigiya. It has to have, you can't just open up an art scroll. I'm going to use the art scroll, and if people who understand what art scroll did for Klal Yisrael is for anybody can open up a Gemara, drink a tea, and learn the most difficult Gemara and relax because he doesn't have to really think. They thought they're thinking for you. It's great because you don't get you can learn on your own and not make a mistake, because if you think you're learning wrong, you just look at the art scroll. It's also very, very good for people who never were in the yeshiva system. But even myself or anybody who gives a shiur, it's fundamental today, and that's what we use simply because to understand the Gemara deeply, it took tens of people each blot to put it together and understand what the blot is talking about. Some of these take 5-7 pages in an art scroll to give understanding of one amud of Gemara. But you're losing what they call the Yigiya Satira. Years back, you had to find something, you learned a piece of Gemara, you had to really struggle to understand every line of the Gemara. And if you had to look something up, you had to go to the bookshelf and hope that that sefer was there, not somebody else was using it in the base medrash, and find it and try to figure out from him. Maybe he understands. Maybe who speaks about this particular element. Today, it's all condensed into one. You have something called the Masifta and the art school, which are incredible. But we lost the Agia. So many times I find myself learning, and you forget much quicker because you didn't focus and you didn't concentrate as much. So the Agia Shneim, it is Mishkach HaSavain. Gemara says if somebody in one of the Mishnahs later, if you forget your learning, it's detrimental to you. It's not good. And how do you forget? Because you weren't. Why? Because you didn't put in enough of an effort, and that's why you deserve some sort of a punishment, even though you learned. But you're supposed to really hurry. You're supposed to work for it, and that's one of the things that I had that the Mishneh, but Gamaliel was saying. You're supposed to do everything you can to try to remember what you learned. You're supposed to do everything you can to help other people as much as possible. The Kotzker Rebbe once asked the Kasha, Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Shemaim with the luchos. He saw what was going on, and he took the luchos and he broke it. Now, you have to remember the luchos were given to him by the Rebbeinu Shalom. Kotzker Rebbe asks, how did he have the right to take something given to him and break it? With what? How did he feel that he had a right to do that? So Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, thought about the interest. He was the greatest one that was oiskim with the tzibur. He was the greatest form of somebody who was oisik. He ran the show, so to speak, for 40 years in the midbar. He knew one thing. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave him the Aseres Adibros, the luchos, but it was a gift. He gave it to them. He knew there was no yigia. He didn't have to work for it. He saw that the future, if we're going to take these Aseres Adibros, you see even now the ego, then the Torah will be forgotten. In order for the Torah to be remembered, you have to be miyagi, you have to work. He threw it down. He says, these luchos will never have a kiyum in the future. It's a chil Hashem, going to be later, I'll prevent it now. Later, when he did the second luchos, what the Torah says, Moshe Rabbeinu himself took a hammer and a chisel, and he chiseled out the luchos on a second set of stone, sapphire. So he saw, the Klal Yisrael was watching him, how he chiseled it out with the sweat in the midbar. Then this is something that's really worth keeping. You see people who inherit things. They inherit things and disappear very easily because they didn't work for it. People who work for something and knows the value of $1 or something of that sort, then you appreciate it much more. I'm going to finish with a very interesting story that I saw. There was a Rav in Miami. In fact, I think his son is now a Rav there, and his name was Rav Shapiro. After the war in the 50s, he went to Eretz Yisrael. And he was walking around and visiting, and he saw in Tel Aviv, in those days, in the 50s, actually most of the, besides Yerushalayim, Tel Aviv was where most Yidden, from Yidden lived, not in Bnei Brak. I mean, Bnei Brak also was very small compared to Tel Aviv. And he was studying, it was Friday in the afternoon, and there was a kiosk that he was watching. There was a man with a long beard. He saw it was obviously an Elocha person who was saying Tehillim. And a customer walks in, and he asks for something, and the man looks at his watch, and he turns to the customer, and he shakes his head. No, the man checks, like, why not? But he says no. So he walks out. So he was very curious, this smart what the story was. So he goes into the kiosk, and he asks him, sir, what was this about? So he says, it's Erev Shabbos. He says, it's after Chatzos. And man walks in, he wanted cigarettes. He wants a pack of cigarettes. I know for a fact if he's buying a pack of cigarettes after Chatzos on a Friday, that part of it he's going to smoke on Shabbos. He says, I didn't want to be part of this Chil Shabbos. Can you imagine this? I mean, it wasn't like this man was obviously wealthy. He had a small kiosk on the corner in Tel Aviv. So this Mordechai Shapiro was very, very impressed with him. So he asks him, who are you? Where are you from? So he says, me, I'm from Minsk. Minsk, yeah. She says, and where are you from? She says, I'm from the United States. Oh, do you know maybe, everyone's thinking, Minsk and the United States, even Minsk was a pretty big city, but so right away he stops. He says, I'm sure, what am I talking about? The United States is a large country. I'm asking you, do you know somebody? She says, no, ask me. He says, I don't even know the guy's name. He says, all I remember him as a little boy, his name was Arla Saslovitsa. Arla Saslovitsa. So he says, so the Mordechai Shapiro gets very excited. And he says, I know. Now, what does Saslovitsa mean? In Europe, they never called anybody by a last name, in the yeshivas especially. Last names only came in a couple of 100 years ago. It wasn't. What happened was the names, the cities got bigger, and you had to identify people. So in fact, a lot of the names were done to anti-Semitic ways because they used to go Klein, Gross in Germany. The head of the town would give you the name unless you paid for it. If you had money, you would pay for a nice name, so you would be called Koenig, which is Koenig today, or you wanted to be king, or just some of these nicer names. But something Schwarz. Schwarz, the guy had dark hair. They called him Schwarz. Weiss, had light hair. Somebody who's Kurtz, small, was called him Klein. The names were given out in the middle of the town square. Your name is Klein because you're short. Your name is Gross because you're tall. Your name is Reuter because you're red. So that was the way they used to give out names. But in the yeshivas, they used to call them by the town they came from. Every yeshiva had only 2 or 3 people from a town. Sometimes it was Moshe from Minsk, was Moshe Minsker, and somebody from Sosaslovitz was the name of a town. So this guy's name was Adela Saslovitz. She says, so Mordechai Shapiro says, I know him. She says, how do you know him? So he says, because when I was in Minsk, I had a very small business like here. I didn't have a lot of money, but there were 2 bachurim in the yeshiva in Minsk that I saw outgrew the yeshiva, and that potential, tremendous potential. So I decided that I was going to put together every single week a little bit, enough money to send them to Slobodka, which was a train right away. And they should go into the Slobodka yeshiva because I knew there they will flourish. I was curious to know, was my investment a good investment? So Mordechai Shapiro looks at him and says, if you would only know the investment that you made. He says, what? He says, Arla Saslovitz today opened up the first kollel in America, and he is the foundation of Yiddishkeit in the Litvische sense in America. He says, really, I'm very happy for my investment. Who was Arla Saslovitz? Was Aaron Kotler. He noticed in this little boy that he had potential, and he sent him to Slobodka. So he asks him, who was the other man? So he says, I don't remember. Okay, fine. So he says, just know that the schar of his Torah, you're getting a portion of his Torah. This is somebody who was oiskim at tzibah. He did something for the tzibah that will, every time somebody learns in Lakewood, now he's getting schar. This man from Minsk. A few years later, in Miami, there was they made a parlor meeting. And this Mordechai Shapiro was the featured speaker. And he says, I want to tell you a story. And he tells a story. And he says, look at a man with a couple of rubles, what he accomplished. Imagine this. He thought he's sending 2 little boys just to learn. He was the foundation of yeshivas in America. His schar, not knowing what he was doing. And Yaakov Kamenetsky was at this meeting here because it was for a Torah this parliament meeting. And he smiles. So Mordechai Shapiro asks him, why smiling? He says, I was the other Bach. This is Oiskim Atzibur, you get schar forever. And even in the future, after he passed on, he still gets schar. So Baruch should give us the understanding that if we undertake something, give something to other people, and help other people, it always comes back and it always helps you, and it gives us chusim for the future. And we'll finish very, very good Shabbos. Take care.